So I guess you're up there.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Deb Albert. I'm a lead instructor here at CanScribe. My coworker Lisa and I today are going to give you a little bit of information on acceptable variations. It's something that we find a lot of students are confused about. We get a number of calls, emails, and that from students that are saying the key has to be wrong. You had follow up this way in one report. I did the same way in the next report if you found out it was wrong. Or I had commas in one report between the vital signs. The next one I put periods and I was marked wrong. So we want to explain it to you and let you know why these are acceptable. They aren't actual errors. They're just differences. So first of all, we're going to give you a definition of like what is an acceptable variation. So simply, it's an allowable difference. So it is something that will not show up the same on your screen, but it is allowed. The acceptable variation may show up as an error on your report. It could be colored purple and green, but it's only because the computer program isn't smart enough to detect that it's an allowable difference. Our program can only tell one way. The way it is in the answer key is the only way it's going to show you as being correct. So if your report does not exactly match that answer key, it's going to show up as purple. That does not mean it's an answer, an error. So as you can see there, this is just one of the small examples that we're just showing you right now. It says Marillax. The student key has the lax part as tall man lettering, and the answer key only had it as a capital L. However, if you look that drug up, both ways are acceptable. So that would be an acceptable variation. One that if you were doing your own grading, you would not mark as an error. And if the instructors were grading it, we would not mark that as an error. So we're going to get into a couple of the acceptable variations. These are the types that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Canadian versus the US spellings, some abbreviations, some medications, some medical words, some English words, and some punctuation. Now, when we get to the end of each section, Lisa and I will stop and we will ask you if there are any questions. I know that probably most of you will be able to give us some more examples of acceptable variations. We'd be happy to hear some of them. So we're going to get started now with the Canadian versus the US spellings. So the words that end in OUR are very common: color, favor, behavior, honor, neighbor. Canada, we spell them with OUR. The United States spells them with OR. Both of them are acceptable variations. It doesn't matter which way you spell it. They are acceptable. They are not errors. If you see it purple in your key, ignore it. Don't mark it because it is acceptable. The same goes for center. Now, with center, it's a little bit different because we use center, CENTRE, when it's a building, like a medical center, a health center, something like that.
Muted.
Use the CENTRE for that. We use CENTER still if we're talking about the center of something, like the center of an apple, the center of the earth, or you want to be the center of attention. That is all CENTER. But if we're talking about center for a building, we use CENTRE. However, in the course, both of them will be accepted. It doesn't matter how you spell them, CENTRE or CENTER, that they're both acceptable. Another word is judgment. Canada, we drop the E. License is another one that's a little bit different. Here in Canada, we use license as a noun or an adjective, like if you have a driver's license, that would be LICENCE. Or if you were to say my license plate, that would be an adjective. That would also be LICENCE. But if we were going to use it as a verb, as in we licensed that product, that would be SE. In the United States, they always use LICENSE. So again, we accept it both ways. Doesn't matter how you spell it. as CE or SE, we will accept them both. Defense is another one. Canada will use DE, FE, and CE. The United States uses SE. When it comes to the words that have the L in the middle, the United States chooses a single L, and Canada, for many of our words, use double L, as in traveled, counseled, etc. Both of them are, again, acceptable. So before we move out of the Canada versus the US spellings, are there any questions on that? Or are there any comments? If you want to just let us know.
Alicia is saying driver's license is with S, not C.
Driver's license for United Canada should be with a C. It's a noun. It would be LICENSE in the United States.
Exactly. Any more comments? Just type them in and we'll read them. Alicia, well, it's with an S in British Columbia.
Well, there's a good acceptable variation for them then.
Thank you, Alicia. Any other comments, questions, comments?
Okay, well, Lisa is going to go on to the next part. She's going to talk about some abbreviations for you.
Okay, so below are a few examples of acceptable variations.
Amanda, yes, Amanda, they're both acceptable. Everything that we just brought up in the preview screen is acceptable either way. Sorry, Lisa.
Oh, no problem. I didn't notice I was up there reading. So below are a few examples of acceptable abbreviations. Like, for example, the HCG with a small h, or you could have it with a capital H. They're all capped, okay? And here are the places that you can find them. You can find both of these abbreviations listed in the reproductive system chapter under terminology, table abbreviations. And of course, the most common is the small h and the capital C and capital G. That is your most common used one. But we accept both, okay? Just to be clear on that. For weight, you can use any one of these three, capital W, small t, or both small, W and small t, low, you know, the lowercase, or both uppercase, W and T. It is preferred to type this as WT, all lowercase, unless, of course, it starts a sentence, then, you know, your uppercase W and lowercase t. But we will also accept capital W or uppercase W and T as it is listed that way in Stedman's Online. And the main reason for not using the uppercase WT is that this abbreviation has other definitions in the medical world, such as wall thickness and wild type, as in genetics. So that's why it's preferred, really, to use the lowercase WT or uppercase W, lowercase t. All right. And another acceptable variation is the IVIG, all uppercase except for the G. Or you can have, you know, the combination of the two, all uppercase IVIG or uppercase IVI, lowercase g. And IVI with the lowercase g can be found in Stedman's Online, and all uppercase letters for IVIG can be found in numerous websites online, such as the emedicine.com and health.gov.nl.ca, just to list a few. There's more as well. And another thing you come across a lot too is the AM, PM. So if you're going to go uppercase on it, that is fine, but make sure you don't use periods, okay? Periods are only for the lowercase. A period M period. So if you put uppercase A period, uppercase M period, that would be incorrect. Or if you just put lowercase am, also that's incorrect. So make sure you do it one way or the other. Okay? Even though the lowercase a period M period or P period M period abbreviation is more commonly used, both are acceptable. And you can see that in BOSS 9.4.1. Amanda, I'll answer that after I'm done. And for milliseconds or Dad, what am I trying to say here? Milligrams per second. Can't get my tongue working right here. Both ways are acceptable. So you can just put S for second or SEC. And both abbreviations for milliseconds are acceptable per BOSS 12.1.5. Okay. Let's see here. Amanda asked, what are those sites you just said? Please, what? Please again. These here, can you see them on there? You can write that down if you want, Amanda. Or after this too, once this gets uploaded, there's going to be a PDF form too that you'll be able to print off. To keep.
I also just want to mention, by the way, the M virgule in this S, it actually stands for meter per second. So it says milliseconds. It's actually meters per second.
Oh yeah, this here. Yeah, yeah. Should be. Good catch, Deb. Meters per second. There we go. Okay. Let's see here, Sarah. I use MS or MSEC for millisecond. Yes, and that's fine. Kate, same. That's what a report key stated the other day when I did one. Yeah, no, we had it wrong there. It's meters per second we were talking about. So for second, you can put S or SEC. Vicky, just type that out. Yeah, those are two different sites.
Usually for the millisecond, it's MS without the virgule, or MSEC without the virgule.
Yeah, and that's what Sarah put, which is correct. I told her.
Yes, yeah. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amanda, see it now. Okay, you're welcome. Amanda, okay, thanks. All clear now, thanks. Alrighty. Okay, so we can go on to the next one. Or was there anything else you wanted to add, Deb? Anything?
No, that's great.
Okay. So I didn't skip over any, no. Okay, so more acceptable abbreviations is things like DNC with the word and or the ampersand, okay? You can find these abbreviations in the reproductive system terminology table, abbreviations. However, remember per BOSS 9.4.2, do not use the ampersand under diagnosis or in an operative title. As well, in the working environment, there may be restrictions on using the ampersand, like such as DNC, as some platforms do not support the use of certain symbols, such as the ampersand. So when they look at that, it could be a totally different type of symbol thing altogether. So you're best off once you get out in the work world is to find out what the preference is on that when it comes to any one of these, whether it's DNC or CNS or H&P, whatever, any one of these. Just make sure you find out when you're there. But as far as we go in the course, you definitely do not use the ampersand if it's under a diagnosis or an operative title. Spell out the word and. Other than that, if it appears anywhere else in the report, either way, with the ampersand or the word and is acceptable. Let's see here. Alicia, please check your PDF if you're having to correct the slides. What?
That's okay. I already answered her, Lisa.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Geez, I'm behind. Yeah. So any questions about this or anything else you want to add, Deb, on this one?
No, it's just that these are all different abbreviations that always use the ampersand in the medical world. There's probably a lot of others as well, but we accept them both with the ampersand and the word and. Some places you work will not accept the ampersand, so you're just going to have to check with the client that you're working for before you begin transcribing to find if they prefer the ampersand or the word and.
Exactly. Okay, so I guess, oh, Joanne, I thought Boss recommended not using the ampersand.
Boss does recommend not using it. It's not mandatory that you don't use it. They'd prefer if you didn't, but it is acceptable. As you know, that our account specifics always trump the book of style, and our account specifics say it could be verbatim, so we are allowed to use H and H. We can also use H and DH. It's one of the ones that they prefer that if you don't use it, but it is acceptable.
Okay. Continuation of acceptable abbreviations. So capital C, lowercase a, or uppercase C and a, uppercase A for cancer. Both ways are acceptable on that. And for the cancer antigen, the CA, uppercase CA, and then hyphen 125, or uppercase CA, no hyphen or space 125, or the uppercase CA with a space 125. They're all acceptable because you can find CA hyphen 125 and CA space 125 in lab procedure tables in the oncology and reproductive chapters, and CA without a space 125 can be found online at sites such as the Canadian Cancer Society, as well as in some of the Stedman's reference materials. And another acceptable variation is the uppercase G, lowercase yn, or all uppercase GYN for gynecology. And you can find these abbreviations in the reproductive system terminology table, abbreviations, okay? And the D tab, you can uppercase DT, lowercase a, uppercase P, or uppercase DT, lowercase AP. This refers to the vaccine name of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay. Refer to BOSS 19.2.2. So remember, we accept both of those spellings. And the AG ratio, you can have the AG part all uppercase or all lowercase. We accept both. This refers to the ratio of albumin to globulin in the serum in a blood test. So both abbreviations are acceptable.
Rachel was just saying that she was sure she got marked as an error for H&P in one of the enter keys, but not instructor graded. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, Rachel, is that it is going to show as an error, but it is not an error. Our keys cannot differentiate between it, so it will show as a difference, but it is not an error. And Kelly answered you correctly. Thanks, Kelly.
Oh, sure. Exactly. And that's why we're doing this today, Rachel, because a lot of students are thinking that, you know, they're getting a lot of errors or, you know, making a lot of mistakes and errors and things when you're not, okay? And of course, when you do it one way, the answer key is going to show it the other way. And where the color is the same, you know, so then you think it's an error when in reality it's an acceptable variation. And if you're ever unsure about something, you know, you certainly could just drop us an email or pure chat or whatever if you're not sure if something's an error or not, and we'll certainly clear it up for you. This is, oh, good. Rachel. Amanda. So if it was self-graded and you took the marks off, don't worry about the acceptable variations.
And that's right. Don't worry at all about acceptable variations. Don't bother deducting for those.
Exactly, because it is an error. So you wouldn't deduct for that. So if you want to put something, you can just put no point value, and in the little comment box beside it say, you know, acceptable variation if you want, or you don't bother at all. Did I answer this one? Are you, Amanda? So, oh, okay. And
yep,
Ellen says, so very helpful, taking some of the tension off my shoulders. That's great. You're welcome, Amanda. Any other questions or any comments you want to make as well, Deb? Anything more to add on?
Nope, that's pretty good. We have one more page, I think, with acceptable lettering in that. So I think that's great.
Okay, so below are some examples of acceptable spelling and lettering of drug names. Some brand name medications use idiosyncratic or mixed capitals lettering per BOSS 7.3.5 and BOSS 13.2.2. It is acceptable to transcribe these drugs with the or with the correct mixed capitals. And here's some examples like Tricor or Miralax, Visohex, Qvar, NyQuil, any one of those. And there's a bunch others out there too. So if you see them and mixed like that, then they're acceptable. Okay.
Some people, by the way, call them, instead of calling it idiosyncratic, some of them you'll hear it called tall man lettering. It means the same thing.
Yes. Which actually I just found that out. Because when you first said tall man lettering a couple of days ago, I thought, what is that?
And that's right. Metrogel is another good one.
Yes. Yeah. And two, while we're on this topic, I mean a little different, but please note too, it is acceptable to spell the drug aspirin with either an uppercase or lowercase lettering, as aspirin can either be a brand or a generic name. So just keep that in mind. We thought we'd throw that in there. That appears in a lot of reports. So just so you know, if you type it in lowercase, the answer key is going to show it in uppercase and vice versa. But both ways are correct. Ellen, you mentioned tall man lettering. Do we type the drug product or the recommended version?
It's either way, whichever way you want.
Exactly.
a lot of people just choose to do like trichord, just the capital T. It's easier than having to hit the control button to capitalize your C as well. So
And
it's just a lot faster.
yeah, and just especially like FISA hex too. Like, you know, it's like, so whatever your preference is.
Yes, correct or correct. That's coming up. Those kind of words are coming up next, I believe, in the English words. But yeah, that's another good acceptable variation. Is correct.
Yeah. And Ellen, thank you. You're welcome. Did I get everybody? Oh, okay. Yep. All right. So we'll move on to the next slide. And this one's about medical and English word acceptable variations in spelling. So let's see here. This thing is in my way. I gotta shrink it up or something. Okay, so brewy or brewies. They're pronounced the same. Okay, so, and it's very hard to know whether should I put an S or shouldn't I put an S. So really the only way you can tell sometimes if it's singular or plural is if the plural verb is dictated. Then the plural spelling is required and vice versa for the singular verb. Did that make sense to everybody? So if they say the patient has what, Deb? Abdominal bruit, then
you can say something. Yeah, that's right. If you were to say there were no bruies, okay, then you have to use the BRUITS because he said were. If he just says no bruit, you don't know. Is he saying no bruit, singular or plural? So we'll accept it either way.
Exactly.
Sometimes you can hear some dictators will say bruies, others won't. They just say brewy. So if you can't tell, we accept it both ways.
Exactly.
However, if it's a singular verb, we will not accept it as a plural, and vice versa. If it's a plural verb dictated, we won't accept it as singular.
Just like we wouldn't any other word. So, yeah. And calyceal, you can spell that with a Y or an I, whichever. Oh, my thing is froze. Tendinitis, another one, you can spell that with an O or an I. Both ways are acceptable. And the same with pyriform, I or a Y. And we also accept too conjoined tendon or conjoint tendon. Stedman's Online shows both of these as being acceptable. So therefore we'll accept both of them. And the same with gallbladder, 2 words, or gallbladder is 1 word. The 1 word spelling is the most common. However, Stedman's Online also shows this as 2 words, but it is more common to be 1. Now, disc or discs, spelled with a K or a C. This is an acceptable spelling only when referring to the spine / vertebrae, okay? Per BOSS 18.2.2. The preference is to use disc when referring to all anatomy other than the eye. So if they're referring to the disc in the eye, always use DISC, okay? So once again, if it's referring to any other part of the body, your spine or vertebrae, or any other part of the anatomy, use disc, DISK. But if it's referring to the disc in the eye, use DISC. Another acceptable variant is mini stroke with or without a hyphen. So a number of medical sites hyphenate this even when not used as an adjective. So your preference. I must have missed some stuff here. Let's see. Anything here? Yeah.
No, no, Ellen was just saying sometimes she hears it as umbrella, and
Okay. So,
yeah, Anna was just saying that somebody said use C for I, C as in the word SEE.
oh
Like the
yeah,
letter
for T. Yeah.
Yeah,
Play
that's
on
a good tip.
words. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good tip. Yes, definitely. Any other?
How about discectomy and discectomy? It's the same thing. Discectomy and
Yeah,
discectomy would be the exact same as disc and disc. You would use a C for the I. If you use disc-ectomy for the I, you would be marked wrong.
exactly.
But if you use disc for the back, you would be fine. So you can use the K in disc and discectomy for the back. But you can only use the C for the I. Uh, 4
So,
and 8 o'clock versus 4 and 8 o'clock are both correct. No. Lisa is saying 4 and 8 o'clock. No, like it would depend, I suppose, on how you were to put it in a sentence there, Lisa. But if you were just to say she'll be seen at 4 to take a medicine at 4 and 8 o'clock, then no. Lisa, I think you have some sort of noise going on back there.
oh, do I?
It sounds like you're moving around a lot. Like there's wind or something behind you.
Oh, I have my fan on. Maybe that's what it is. Sorry.
So, did you have a different suggestion or a different question, Lisa? Sandy, Rye? Standard Douglas says it sounds like a dictation, Lisa. It's an operative report. So it would depend, Lisa, on how it was dictated. Like if it was just something like she'll take her medications at 4 and 8 o'clock, nothing would be hyphenated. But if it was 4 and 8 o'clock regimen regime or something like that, then the 8 o'clock regimen would use the hyphens because it's being used as a compound modifier followed by the noun. Oh, the 4 and 8 o'clock surgical position. Yes, that would be acceptable as well. That would be correct. Yes. Okay, Lisa.
Okay. And there you go, Deb.
Okay, when we go on, okay, so some more medical and English word acceptable variations in spelling. We have healthcare, could be either one word or two words. There is another rule for using healthcare. However, we haven't been using it because it's acceptable both ways per Stedman's. Guide pin and guide pin, one word or two, same as guide wire. Could be one word or two. Again, in Stedman's medical and surgical equipment words, it has it both ways. And Stedman's online shows both spellings for guide wire. Interestingly, it only shows it as two words for glide wire, but guide wire is showed both ways, and as is guide pin. Distension with a T versus distension with an S. Lisa, both of those have T's. Can you fix one for me? Both of those are acceptable. Time frame versus time frame, one word or two. Again, both are acceptable. The bony with the EY. Now that's something that is not very commonly used. Actually, some sites actually listed as being slang. However, according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it is an acceptable spelling. Boney M. That's right, the name of the band, Boney M. Yep. Lisa, can you fix distension, please? Both of them have a T at the end.
Oh.
But yeah, so even though previously we used to always consider B-O-N-E-Y as a slang way of spelling it. It is acceptable per Merriam-Webster dictionary, so we would accept it as well in a report. Flatfoot and flatfoot, per Stedman's, they're both acceptable. Same as hammer toe, one word or two, and per Stedman's resources. Now maneuver is a little bit different. This is a British spelling, which we are not permitted to use in the course. However, this is one of the British spellings that Canada has continued to use. So maneuver is acceptable with an O-E-U-V-R-E at the end. Most times, I think most of us in Canada will use the US spelling of it as M-A-N-E-U-V-E-R. But if you do happen to use a British spelling of this word only, not the other British words, just this one, we will accept it. So follow-up, this is another one that we know people have a lot of problem with sometimes. Follow-up is acceptable only when used as an adjective, as one word or hyphenated. So if it's a follow-up appointment, then you can use one word or you can use it hyphenated. So Suki is saying that she is confused over that. So is it just the noun versus the adjective, or is it the verb as well?
Is she talking about
both? Okay, both. Okay, so if you're using it as a noun is always one word. If you're going to type follow-up as a noun, she's going to have she will be seen in follow-up. That's a noun. That has to be one word. She will have a follow-up appointment. Follow-up is describing what kind of appointment. It's an adjective. It can be hyphenated, or per the book of style now, it's acceptable to type it as one word. If it's going to be used as a verb, she will follow up next week, then it has to be two words. Workup and workup is the exact same. Whoever just put that in there, which was Sandra Douglas. Workup and workup is the exact same as follow-up. If it's a noun, one word, verb, two words, adjective, it can be one word or hyphenated. The upwards, any of the upwards follow the same rule as follow-up.
Can I just add something quickly?
Yeah.
For Suki, if you go in the forum and check the webinars in the folder 2017, back in September of 2017, I did a webinar on the different follow-ups. I made it like 20 or 25 questions as a task, and the answer key follows. And there's still also on capitalization of divisions and compound modifiers. So that might serve you well to check that out.
Perfect. Okay, you want to check our next slide?
Sure can.
So our next slide is something on acceptable punctuation when we're transcribing. So there are a few different ways that are acceptable for transcribing vital signs in the physical exam. This is something else that we get a lot of questions about. So it's like, well, why were the vital signs commas this time? Why were they periods this time? How come I got marked wrong by an instructor? So I'm going to explain these out to you. The first example you see here, we have blood pressure 120/80, comma, temp 36.9, comma, pulse 78, comma, respirations 20. Okay, with those, you can use all commas between them, or you can use periods between them, because there are no complete sentences. So it is your choice what you choose to use. Now, we used all commas here, so if you use all periods, it's going to show as a difference on your report. Again, that is not an error. It's an acceptable variation. You skip over it and do not mark it. If you want to mark it, you would mark it as a no point value acceptable variation. Now in our second example, if you notice, we do the exact same thing, but I did them with periods this time. Again, it's acceptable with commas or periods. There are no complete sentences. Now in the third example, however, if you noticed, the first part of that is the sentence. Blood pressure is 120/80. Since the verb is was dictated here, it has to be a period after that. Now what comes after it? Temp 36.9, pulse 78. You can follow those with periods if you want, but because neither of those are complete sentences, it is acceptable to separate them with a comma. However, the last part of it, respirations are 20. Again, it's a full sentence. Respirations is your subject, are is your verb. So you must, again, follow that with must be preceded by a period. So it can be a little bit confusing. The last one is same type thing. Blood pressure 120/80, temp 36.9. We separate them with commas because they were not complete sentences. The last two are complete sentences. The last one is a complete sentence. Pulse is 78. That is a complete sentence. So we need to have that enclosed in periods, which makes respirations 20. Start with the capital letter. We can't have pulses 78 joined to the comma before it because it is a complete sentence. Now you could have pulses 78, comma, respirations 20. You could do that because respirations 20 is not a complete sentence.
Jessica is saying sometimes the key shows semicolons. The only time. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, the semicolons is completely different. The semicolons would be if there was an internal comma used. So if it was to say something like blood pressure 120/80, repeat was 136/75, temperature 36.9, blah, blah, blah. That would have to be separated by semicolons because repeat by me, or repeat is, whatever we said that was, that would be, need to be an internal comma. It would need to be separated by semicolons. So you would have to have blood pressure 120/80, comma, repeat 120/85, semicolon, temperature 36.9, semicolon, pulse 78, semicolon, respirations 20. Anytime you have an internal comma used, you need to use semicolons to separate each item. Is anybody confused, or are you okay with that?
Everybody okay with that?
Could you still use a period instead of, yes, you could. If they were not complete sentences, Christine, you could use a period instead of the semicolon. But if they were complete sentences, you could not use a semicolon. Sorry, you could use a period. The period you could use anytime you feel like using the period. You can use it in the vital signs. Okay, some more acceptable punctuation, reevaluation, and anti-inflammatories. The first two are both the exact same rule. When you have double vowels coming together, it is acceptable to type it as one word or have it hyphenated. Per the book of style now, the 6.5.8, the industry is trending away from using the hyphen in double vowel words unless they can be confused, like the word recreation. If you were to put RE, like you want to create something again, you're putting it's a recreation. Well, if you didn't use a hyphen, then you have recreation, which means something completely different. So unless it can be confused as something else, you can put it as one word or hyphenated. But for something like recreation, you would have to hyphenate that because without it, you're changing the meaning of the word. So for doctor, Mrs., Mr., junior, senior, again, book of style 6.1.1 states that it is acceptable to drop the period, and it's actually preferred to drop the period when you're talking about personal titles. However, if you choose not to, that is perfectly fine. So you can put doctor period or doctor with no period. Both of them are acceptable, same as Mr., Miss, the whole bit. Okay, I'm glad, Suki, that helps you.
Yes.
Okay, now the next one is dear doctor name with a colon and dear doctor name with a comma. This is something else that we hear a lot. Both are acceptable. There are no errors deducted no matter how you do that. You can use the colon semicolon or the comma. And it's, if you look in Book of Style 1.2.2, it tells you the rule for doing that. E. coli, it's similar to the Mr. and Mrs. They're recommending that we drop the E after the genus when it's followed by its species if the genus is abbreviated. So in this case, E. coli, it is
the period, not the E.
Sorry, the period. Yes, what did I say?
You dropped the E.
Oh, sorry. No, drop the period after the E. Sorry. So yeah, it's E. coli or E. period coli. The industry is trending away from dropping the period, but either is acceptable. Now, semicolon or period before, however. She was given Tylenol, period, however, her pain did not improve, or semicolon, however, her pain did not improve. When you are joining two similar sentences and there's no conjunction involved, you are permitted to use a semicolon. The age with fractions is so annoying, but I'm getting used to it finally. That is the last one we have here. So we have the 5 and 9 12-year-old male or 5 and 9 12-year-old male. We had quite a bit of discussion over this as an instructional team, trying to figure out if we were actually doing it ourselves properly. So the 5 and 9 12-year-old male, that's kind of a no-brainer. It's almost like if I was to say, I have a 2.5-year-old baby, you are going to put 2-1/2. Well, 9/12 is the same thing. It's a fraction. Now, I contacted HDI myself to ask them, would it be acceptable to do it as a 5-and-9/12-9/12-year-old male? And I was told it would be acceptable, but it would be preferred to do it the first way, 5-9/12-year-old male. So anybody that, is concerned or gets confused with that, it is confusing, Amanda, then, you can contact us on the instructional team and we can probably give you a handout, maybe make up some other examples and samples for you. My suggestion is if you have a fraction, do it the first way we're showing there. That would be the easiest way. Okay, Lisa, you want to do the miscellaneous acceptable variations?
Sure. So, cranial nerves. It is acceptable to transcribe cranial nerves using either the Roman numerals. And you can check that out in BOSS 18.2.1. And there's the example. Okay. Or a lot of times they'll say 2 through 12. So if you
Ashley, sorry, Amanda's just saying you're cutting out, and Lisa, you cut out for me as well.
Oh, did I? Am I still cutting out, or?
Yeah, you are cutting in and out.
Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. Am I still cutting out when I'm reading?
You seem to be okay there. Right now you were cutting out when you're reading, yes.
Okay, sorry. Like I said, the cranial nerves, it is acceptable to transcribe cranial nerves using either Arabic or Roman numerals. Check that out in BOSS 18.2.1. And the example, 2-12 or, the Roman numerals. But if they say 2 through 12, you should type the word through, of course, verbatim. Sandra. I can understand you, Lisa. My listening ear is amazing these days. Oh, that's good.
Rita asked, okay, is that 5 years, 9 months? That is what 5 and 9/12, what the dictator is saying. That the patient is 5 years and 9/12 of a year. So about basically 5 3/4-year-old child.
Okay. So, name or date blanked out text. It is often difficult to know what text is actually being blanked out of the dictation. So if you have no way of knowing what was intended, it is acceptable to use name or date. If either one can fit in the context of that sentence, then you know, we accept either way.
Place is the same thing. Name or place would be acceptable too if you weren't sure, Angela.
Yeah, exactly. 7 or Chem 7. You can use it with a dash or without. It's seen both ways, so either way is fine. All upper or lowercase for RBC is also acceptable, and you can check that out in BOSS 16.1.2. And minus and plus or in the symbols. It is acceptable to use either the symbol or the word as long as you are certain the symbol will be easily noticed and clear in its. And you can see that on BOSS 9.4.2. Vitals per emer or vitals per either with or with a colon is acceptable, so that's fine. Lefort with or without a space is also acceptable, and you can find that in BOSS 18.1.5. Shows this as one word, and Stedman's Resources shows this as 2 words. So therefore we'll accept both. And video duodenoscope or video duodenoscope. 1 word or 2. We found both in Stedman's online resources, so we accept both ways, 1 or 2 words. Any questions on that, or Deb, anything you want to add? Or
no, I think that's fine. Anybody have any questions on it? No? Okay, I guess we're good to go on.
Okay, then the big finale. Go for it, Deb.
Okay, well, hopefully now you see that the purple and green, your transcriptions, you're going to be able to differentiate between true errors and acceptable abbreviations. So as we discussed throughout this webinar, not everything purple represents an error. So do we have some questions, some comments? Does anybody know some other acceptable variations? When is it not okay to use a dictated abbreviation, GI? Okay, you can use a dictated abbreviation anywhere unless it's a disease-related abbreviation.
And it depends on what section too, right, Deb?
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it's a disease-related abbreviation, you can't use it in the assessment, diagnosis, or impression.
Exactly.
But again, that's going to go to about against your, according to your account specifics when you're out in the work world. There are a lot of places that will not allow you to use an abbreviation in a heading. So it's all going to go according to your work world contract, but for the course, it's acceptable to use it unless it's a disease-related abbreviation, and then you cannot use it in an assessment, impression, or a diagnosis. I'm glad everybody's saying that it's much clearer. Okay, in account specifics, stacked format and list format look the same in the examples. I was trying to figure out the difference. The difference between a stacked format and a list format is that in a stacked format, you're going to have at least one subheading in there. So it could be something like abdomen soft, benign. It doesn't say abdomen is soft. It says abdomen soft. That means it has to be a subheading, and if it's a subheading, then you must stack the entire physical exam. Is that okay?
Janice, what about second or second if it's referring to degree?
That's very good. If it's referring to a burn, then for sure it's acceptable. So yeah, we are accepting when it's talking about degree, second degree, or the word second degree. That's a good one to mention, Janice.
Sandy, is this going to be in the forum later under 2018? I just want to be able to find it. Yes, Sandy, it will be. Give it 2 or 3 days and it'll be uploaded, and plus a PDF form of it as well.
Joanne, if you would like to send me an email, my email address is dalbert or dalbert@canscribe.com. I'll definitely help you with that. This is dalbert. It looks like dalbert@canscribe.com.
Yeah, the biggest thing to remember for the physical exam, to stack it. If you have a subheading, stack it. If you don't, paragraph format.
Are there any other questions? Why is first what? But it. Hang on. Why is first wrong, but first is right? That's, Amanda, that's according to the account specifics. It's an account specific rule. So if you look under ordinals in your account specifics, there is a rule there telling us that we can use ordinals.
Well, that wraps up our time. You're all welcome very much. I'm glad that it was very helpful. And like I said, give it 2 or 3 days. It'll be uploaded in the forum for anybody. Deb, any closing words you want to say?
No, great. If there's anything else that anybody wants some more clarification on, just contact either Lisa or myself, and we'll be happy to help you.
Very well.
Everybody's welcome. I hope you all have a great rest of the week.